How are you doing, everybody? I'm glad you came out. It's David W. Williams, also known as Diamond Dave, the founder of the highest paid part-time job in the world options training academy. We're not going to talk about options today. We're going to talk about, to me, which is a very, very interesting topic, and it's something that's current to what's going on social media. And one of the things that we see on social media is that we see a lot of people giving financial advice, giving financial consultation, giving financial strategies, and they may or may not be qualified to do that. So what I wanted to do is I had to kind of pull out the bat phone and bring in the heavy hitters. And I wanted to bring in somebody that I know has a very robust background in the particular space, talking to George Dandridge Jr. And what we're going to talk about today is financial gurus on YouTube, misunderstood and misguiding the vulnerable. So if you're watching this particular video and you want to know whether or not this person on YouTube that's giving you financial advice, whether you should listen to them, whether you should discard them, whether you should go out here in the real world and hire somebody that actually has a track record and experience in that space, you're on the right show. So, George, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, Dave, man. Thank you for having me on. Love the topic, love what you're doing, and glad to contribute to your audience.
Okay, so really quickly, because people may not know you, and I want people to really get comfortable with you and kind of understand, who you kind of are in the space. So, give us a heads up, just really quickly, about how long you've been working in the financial services industry.
The industry itself, a little bit over 17 years, specifically in the tax sector for 9 years.
Okay. And what kind of led you to get into this particular space?
It was actually two very different points that happened. In a previous career, when I worked in corporate America, I was for lack of better words, firefighter. So I would relocate almost every 2 years to go fix the next situation. Well, in the process, letters from the IRS wasn't catching up with me. Right after, I'm originally from New Orleans, and right after Katrina, my now ex-wife had introduced me to somebody to get our taxes done or whatever. I didn't know them. My person was gone or what have you. And for the first time ever, I saw this huge refund. I thought it was connected to the damage at the house and, things of that nature or what have you. Well, turns out, and a lot of people don't know this about tax audits and whatnot, you can be audited simply because of who done your taxes, because they may be under investigation. And so in this particular case, once the IRS has somebody on their radar where so many returns are kind of looking the same way, or they're having, the same type of discrepancies, they'll launch an investigation on that person. And as a result, a certain number of people will be like, they'll inspect a certain batch and, go and audit those people or what have you. So it was about, it had to be almost 6 years later, 5 or 6 years later. Very, very scary situation. I was set to go to Hawaii, and I was taking my mother and some other family with me, and I'm the provider in that.
Look, he might have cut off for a second. Let me hit him up on the back channel because I think he might have cut off. Be 1 second.
Okay, Dave.
You came back. All right, you good to go?
Okay. So yeah, I didn't know. I had never bought a carton of cigarettes, but I was going to be in Hawaii for like 9 or 10 days. We're doing the island cruise and everything. So I went to go and buy a carton of cigarettes because I was told everything was super expensive in Hawaii. And I went in the store and my card declined. And I'm like, no, run it again. Like something's wrong with your system or whatever. They're like, yeah, no, it's declined or whatever. So I called the bank. And they're like, yeah, well, your money's there or whatever. And then the lady says, oh, wait, there's a lien on your account. Who's leaning on my account? What you talking about?
Yeah.
And so this was very, very scary because my flight was leaving in less than, 24 hours, and so I reached out to someone I knew in the industry, and I had no idea what an enrolled agent was at the time and how powerful the role was. But I reached out to them just to see if they could help me at all. And she was like, yeah, get these docs to me right away or whatever. Took them to her, that same afternoon. And I got on the plane with no access to money at all. But when I touched down in Hawaii, that lien was removed.
Okay.
And at that point, I became intoxicated with the idea of pursuing that role.
Okay. Okay. That's a great story. So it was really your own personal experience that kind of got you into this particular space.
Yes. And what really, that's what started the investigation, I guess, to the journey.
Okay.
The next couple of things that happened, I had a partnership in a restaurant with my mother, and I was out of town. She was basically running things, and I would drop in, every couple of months. But there were some questions I had about a specific accounting method, and I couldn't find quality answers or whatever. So that led into the deep research of my own. And then lastly, when I relocated to Dallas, Texas, for the first time ever in life, I had a difficult time finding the level of employment I was used to or what have you. And I just took that as the sign, because I was already looking at starting my business in the previous city. I just took that as the sign that, hey, this is the time. Let's just, go hang the hat and go for it, because clearly I'm not employable.
Yeah, I feel you. Yeah, and I can understand that. I've had similar situations to that. So let's go in and get into the topic, because we got a little bit of a background. Why do we see so many people on social media? Or why do you believe that we observe so many people on social media, especially now, ever since that pandemic hit, that are giving what could be kind of classified as financial advice?
That's a good question, Dave. And I think that the pandemic just kind of exasperated it, because we were seeing this before the pandemic. Maybe I saw more of it because I'm in the space, but there is an art and science to the whole social media thing. And a person can be successful on social media without actually being successful. And they'll run the numbers up and run the bag up because they've mastered whatever the little nuances are to getting themselves seen or whatever, and building a following on social media. Attach that to the fact that who doesn't want to talk about money? Prior to that being a thing, whenever I used to go into schools and stuff like that, the way I would quickly get the kids' attention, is I'd say, instead of who wants to be a doctor, who wants to be a lawyer, I'd say, who wants to be rich when they grow up? Most hands are going to go up. And now they're tuned in because everybody wants to talk about money to some extent. Well, what's happening on social media is oftentimes you get people that's got this much information, and they take it and run with it. And because they have a certain degree of eloquence and articulation or whatever, coupled with that social media genius or whatever, they're able to fool the masses.
Okay. Okay. So we currently now, and this is something that I've observed, and I'm gonna kind of follow up with this also. We have thousands of people that are certified by some type of governing body in the financial sector.
Mm-hmm.
And you kind of spoke to this on the response to the earlier question. So with those thousands of people that are certified, how come they're not really well known on social media?
That one's easy.
Okay.
The sheer amount of time that we spend on getting the information ourselves, we don't have time to social media. Some of us hire people, whatever, to kind of do that thing, and it's difficult to hire someone to kind of manage your personality, if you would, because everyone isn't for everyone. So, case in point, um, I have a bit of a social media presence. Some people think it's bigger than it is, but I have some colleagues that's like killing it, that's like major players on social media. But there's people that gravitate to me, and then there's people that they like, this asshole, and they ain't trying to talk to me, at all. So those of us in this lane over here, we kind of get it. And because of that, for us, it's not a competitive thing, you see, because we know there's some hundreds of millions of taxpayers in the United States or whatever. We only have the capacity to handle so many, so there's no need to really compete. We share information. The other side of that is a question of what level do you want to compete at? Somebody told me that when I think I was like 20 or 1 or something, that life is a struggle. It's just a question of what level you want to struggle at, So that part is choices. And I can honestly say over the time I've been in this specific sector of the business, what's been crazy is my business literally almost changes every year because I read tax code like most people watch reality TV, and so it opens different doors to different asset levels or whatever. And then I get kind of priced out of certain conversations.
Okay. But so let me ask you, because it's something I heard from a gentleman who works in the financial industry, and he talked about how because there's so many regulations in that industry, you can't necessarily market yourself like a person that doesn't have any credentials or any type of accreditation. And he said that was the biggest barrier, because he says that a person that is not certified or accredited in any area can just get on YouTube or Facebook and say anything. And he said, well, we can't say certain things, so that doesn't allow us to really market ourselves. So I wanted to get some kind of feedback from you, because I know that you were running a really, really successful business. And I assume that you had to have some level of marketing to get to the business level that you got. So how were you able to get around those particular barriers that they actually exist?
So like you said, the governing bodies dictate who can say what and when.
Okay.
For example, I can't speak on everything that I know because it's considered practicing law, or it's considered, outside of this realm. So I have to lead my conversations from this aspect and basically kind of lead you over here to talk about it so I can kind of open up. But then still at that point, I'm limited on what I can tell you or share with you or whatever, and how I advise you. So this is different for financial planners. It's different for someone with a Series 6 or Series 7 that's doing the investment stuff. It's also different for those of us that have life insurance licensing or what have. There are things that you can and can't do, and some things you can do with a certain audience. You can't do with another one. Like you say a certain thing to somebody that's over 60 years old, you might have your license stripped. Now here's the other side of that coin. If you don't have any licenses or whatever to lose, you just run amok, and a lot of people are really kind of doing that. The key there, though, to get back to what you were really asking, is when consumers learn some of the basic language that they need to understand what they themselves need, then they can weed out what's fake real quick. I sent you a picture that a group of us was clowning about the other day in a group, because they had this guy who's in the tax industry, and he's using all of these romanticized alphabets or what have you. And it's hilarious to those of us that know, because we know it doesn't mean anything, So you have a lot of that out there, and people have, despite whatever regulations we deal with, people have a stake in or investing in, learning enough to apply to their situation. And that's not just in the financial industry or whatever. That's, across the board, whatever you get into, if you're going to invest in some stocks or whatever else the case may be, you need to know a little bit something about what you're doing, and I see a lot of that too, like people don't understand the tax consequences to these actions they're doing online. There's people that still believe that crypto isn't taxable, certain licenses are run by different bodies of government, and it dictates what you can do. And one of the most abused words that we have in the financial industry is the word certified. And the question, I'm going to give y'all $1 million a game right here in one sentence. Whenever somebody tells you certified, whatever comes after that, ask them by who? Who certified you? because if it wasn't a state board, a federal license, some, governing body that can impose consequences to misbehaviors and things of that nature, then certified by who? So that's like the key question, because most of us you never heard a life insurance agent say, I'm a certified life insurance agent. You ever heard a CPA say, I'm a certified CPA, or whatever the case may be, and most of those titles or whatever we use, whatever alphabets are associated, with our particular profession. I shortened mine to the federal license because my name would be this long if I lined up all the alphabets. So that's like a key question you can ask somebody when you're looking to inquire about their services, or who licensed you, who certified you, because everything doesn't require a license. But if you're using the word certified, then hey, who certified you?
Okay, and I'm really glad you said it, because kind of parallel, but I don't come out of an industry that you need to be certified to actually operate, is that, when I was a media buyer, I saw a lot of people on the internet talking about media buying, and I knew they didn't know what they were talking about. Mm-hmm. But because you don't need to be certified, you don't need to have any kind of legal process to be a media buyer, you can pretty much just get on the internet and say anything that you want. But one of the things I learned from people like yourself and other people that were in business is I just really focused on my business and didn't really focus on shouting those people down, because I can't stop them from doing what they're doing. And so right. That's something that I learned, is that, people can go on the internet and say anything about anything and you can't stop it. So I didn't want to give energy to them. My goal was just, let me see how good I can get at what I'm doing to help as many people as possible. And hopefully they will eventually get attracted to me because of the value that I bring. So I just think that's something that we deal with in every space. I can get on the internet tomorrow and say I'm a great mechanic. It doesn't really mean I know how to fix cars. Mm-hmm. Like, anybody can do this. So I'm really glad that you brought that out. And also with the certification, who actually certified you, because people kind of use it at what I call a prestige badge. Mm-hmm. I know what an EA is. I know how you got that particular title. Mm-hmm. But this whole I'm certified after that, like you said, who are the people that certified you? And then who are they? So who are they to certify you? And those are the kind of questions we don't ask, because we just hear certification and we think the person knows more than us, but we don't necessarily know how they got that certification.
Well, and also to speak to your point earlier about being able to kind of get on there and say anything, or the fact that like industries that
you cut off for a second,
require licenses, etc., going to this industry is probably one of the lowest barriers of entry that there are. And that's why you have people jump in and out and so forth and so on. We actually call them tax hustlers, because and they just actually started charging for the P10 again. But prior to that, there was that gap where literally the cost to get into the tax industry was absolutely zero. It required all of about an hour and a half of your time, of your focused time, to get the identification numbers necessary to be able to operate. And operating as that person, and don't get me wrong, everybody has to start from somewhere. This is not a jab at people that's just getting into the industry. What you'll tend to see, though, is a big difference for somebody that's coming into the industry with those type of mindsets or whatever, and then somebody that's been in the industry 5, 6, 7 years, but they still operate like that. That's the people you have to watch out for, because those are the ones that are really dangerous, But yeah, it's a very low barrier of entry, and people prey on those that don't know, basically the consumer. They prey on what they don't know. They prey on their lack of financial literacy, and to that degree, I'm kind of like public enemy number one, because while I may not call out a tax professional or whatever on social media, that don't mean I won't run you under the bus, because I will send a letter to, if a client comes to me and you messed over them, we sending that form to the IRS about practitioner responsibility. You get it? But online though, and going back to the online part of it, this eliminated the proximity necessity. So people are able to do a lot more with a lot less as a result, and they're able to create these personas or whatever and really just kind of run away with it. And they use certain key formulas, basically quick pay, higher returns. Like I'm going to say the most unpopular thing to the tax industry right now. This is an indicator to you that someone is basically looking for low-hanging fruit and trying to attract the masses. When you start seeing stuff like get the max back and higher refunds and the loans and this and that and the other, hey, look, not to criticize anybody's situation, but if you have to get a tax refund advance this year and you still have to get one next year, there's a problem. You don't know what may have put you in that situation this year. You may not know no better, whatever circumstance, you might have lost your job. But if you still got to get one next year and you're so things that crossed a lot of people up back at the beginning of the pandemic, on set, back then that February, everybody was a baller. Social media was flossing, and then everybody was going crazy looking for, stimulus payments and PPP money or whatever. Wait, you balling though? You went broke in a month, So these are the kind of things you can see through, and the amount of time we spend getting this knowledge. You ain't got time to be selling bundles and cooking chicken plates and 50 other side hustles. Most of the people you see in the financial service industry, whatever other streams of income they have, are synergistic with the financial services industry. It's not something they have to reach out and do something totally different and put on another hat. It's something that's just synergistic with whatever their specialty is, and they're able to run with that, and earn more. But the people that's just in it for the quick dollar, it's like they're seasonal, people. They get in, they get out. Like the number of people we had become financial professionals when they thought they could get a commission or whatever off of helping people get PPP loans and stuff like that. Oh man, it was crazy. So this is why that happens though.
Okay. And so what do you think, in your opinion, how can we close the gap between people's desire to improve financially and the people who are actually, certified or qualified in the space? How can we close that gap between those two groups of people?
That's a great question, Dave. That's a great question. Might hurt some feelings on this one. Believe it or not, most people don't want what they say they want.
Okay.
Everybody claims to want to attain wealth, but how many of them really study money? Everybody claims to want to, break whatever cycle or thing they came from, but what are they actively doing? How are their actions lining up with that? And see, the thing is about those of us that are the professionals in the space. When we're not getting the education, we're giving the education. Sometimes it's paid, but we're always giving it, not to the point of abuse and not to the point where we're going to be in the space, fertilizing, unfertile ground or whatever. And what I find is that most people want to look like they want to participate, but they're really not about that life. That's not really what they want. And because I don't care where you're tuning in from right now, whatever zip code you're in, I promise you, if you put this much effort into looking for a legitimate financial professional or looking for legitimate financial information, that you can build upon, I promise you this much effort will yield so many results that by the time you absorb all of that, everything else you're looking for is just going to come to you.
Okay. So what do you think, and this is just going to be from your experience, the people that say, I want to improve myself financially, but they're kind of lazy or they maybe are looking for the quick route, what do you believe they're really looking for from your own experience?
Well, you just said it. They're looking for the quick route. And this is evident by, it's I don't know if you remember this commercial. I forget what company it is. It was a cell phone commercial, and they were saying that was so 4 seconds ago. That was paramount and indicative on the type of society we are in, because everybody wants everything now. And there's a couple of things that you just cannot achieve with that. Yeah, lightning strikes here and there like a lottery number, but for the most part, you can't lose weight overnight, and you can't attain wealth overnight. You don't blow up to 400 pounds overnight. And most times, what people don't realize is that whatever amount of money you're making right now, I don't care what your financial situation is, whatever amount of money you're making right now, until you figure out how to make that enough, more is not going to help that situation, because there's behaviors attached to your relationship with money that's getting in the way of your growth. Then the second part of that is simply have them ask themselves, because if you ask them, they're going to lie to you. So have them ask themselves, when you get in your quiet space, your prayer closet, wherever you go to do what you do, ask yourself, what effort did I really make to change in my financial situation? Because most people, when it comes to that, they just make excuses instead. I have more people tell me they can't afford life insurance without getting a quote. Like, how you know you can't afford it? You don't know the first thing about it.
Yeah.
So you have to ask yourself, what actions are you really taking to bring that about? And unfortunately, everybody wants the microwave result. They want to watch a YouTube video and be able to click an app on their phone and think they're going to throw $100 at something, and a week is going to pass and they're going to retire. Like, it's never going to work.
Okay. So I appreciate the answer. Now I want to ask you, because there is a lot of financial information on the internet, and I've looked up IRS questions myself. But one thing I've experienced is that there's a lot of information, but it's kind of very ambiguous. It's really not clear in the particular financial services space. Why do we believe, if you can kind of work with me on this, why that the average consumer perceives the information being presented that way, to where it's kind of like I just get confused and I don't know what to do?
So, yeah, it is quite ambiguous to what's considered a layman's, especially IRS terms. Some of the stuff that's related to investing and whatnot, you can kind of commit to quickly learning the terminology, and it kind of passes from level to level. The Internal Revenue Code, if you don't speak the language, you could read it all day and it's just not gonna make sense to you. This is by design. There's literally two tax systems in America, and most people aren't aware of what the second one are. Even those, I'm talking about rich people, they don't really know what the second one is. And it's shrouded in ambiguity, but at the same time, it's right there in front of you, and so it's almost like deciphering code, if you would. And when you do, it's like, oh, hell, really? So that's one of those things where, and that's another reason why information being shared by people that have a speaking dynamic or whatever tends to seem so powerful, because if you don't know really what a term is, or how you get there, and how it applies or whatever, and someone comes and they're speaking on this thing, and they could be unloading a whole crock of doo-doo, in the process, but it sound fly, it's like, wow, oh, this guy, and again, just ask some simple questions. Well, how's that been working out for you? How do you apply it? It's kind of like the people that want to sell you retiring with the MLM, and you ask them how much money they make because they're sitting here selling this idea or whatever, and come to find out they started last week and they got a ride to the presentation. Like, come on, man. So it's really, the same thing. And one of the things you'll find out about, and I know that you know this, Once you get into the vein of money, you know, it doesn't matter where your specialty space is. When you just really get into the vein of that conversation, I promise you, things around you will change. The people will change. You know, you don't have to cut nobody off. They won't be around you because, oh, there he go with this again. You know, at the same time, other doors are going to open and you're going to be able to walk in and know that you belong in that room, even if you haven't attained what some people in there have or whatever. You've earned the right to be in that space. You know, so once you get into that vein of money, what you're going to find is that there are just some key principles, and all this other stuff, all these other smoke and mirrors is just regenerated concepts with new sexy terms on it. That's all it really is. Case in point, infinite banking. You know, they're circling the internet right now. Like, this is the most powerful thing. And this ain't nothing but mastering the use of cash value life insurance and using more updated policies in the IUL, the Index Universal Life, you know, to advance the gains and protect against losses. It's not that complicated, but they get into infinite banking. Wow. And they start talking about how they, you know, finance this from this. And it's the same thing with the credit space. You know, everybody talks about what credit can attain, but nobody talks about how you going to deal with that bill when it comes. Because if you got 800 credit today and can't pay a bill in 30 days, you got problems. You know, so same concept.
Okay. So now the question we want to ask is that if a person is certified or qualified in tax or an accountant or, you know, certified financial planner, does a possibility exist that they can still give incorrect information? Because a narrative that we're being sold by a lot of people on the internet is that we should only deal with people that have the certifications because they know everything they can to be known about this particular topic. So it's almost impossible that they can tell us something incorrectly.
So that's actually a two-part thing, Dave.
Okay.
So when you talk about people like Series 6 and CFPs, their language is a little bit different. Here, with the exception of the tax space, here's the one thing that all financial avenue discussions kind of have in common when it relates to the professional and their responsibility to the client is suitability. Mm-hmm. And if you have a person that's ready, willing to spout off answers without getting some information first, that's a red flag. You know, it's a red flag because of this reason. Right now, I can put 15 people in a room, and all 15 of these people can work at the same job, same shift, make the same amount of money or whatever, same position and everything. And I can literally have 15 different tax situations come out of that. You know, so there's no cookie cutter answer to things. So oftentimes what you'll see is financial professionals speaking on things that either apply to the audience that they're addressing at the time, or some things that are just staples and standards that, you know, this is the rule. Now, how the rule applies to you is a different discussion, but this is the rule. And they'll have the conversation in that vein. Well, the other side of that, though, is when people want to, like, you know, I get it all the time when I do speaking engagements. Somebody feels something I said and they go, well, what about this and what about that? I need to know a whole lot more about what's going on with you, because I already know you're coming from a very personal space right now, you know, and I'd be reckless to just give you a cookie cutter answer. So this is the point in time where, you know, I have to offer a discounted link consultation or something like that, so I can give you a quality answer. And the person that has too much pride to do that is reckless and shouldn't be in the profession, you know, because, hey, there's some guys, you know, that I really look up to that's like OGs in the game, been doing this since I was in grade school, right? And they'll be the first to tell you, you can't know the entire Internal Revenue Code. It's not possible.
Okay. Now let me ask you, kind of build up on that. If I'm dealing with a financial services professional and they give me information that is incorrect, is it sometimes because they don't know or because you can't be right about everything? So are they, when you're working with a financial services professional, if they give me information or consultation that's straight out of a book, similar to maybe if I'm dealing with maybe like an accountant, or do they have some type of discernment or subjective analysis in what they're doing, kind of based on dealing with me? So that if, let's say, I'm dealing with a person that got a Series 6 and they say, okay, well, we think you should do 1, 2, 3, and it doesn't work. Can I go back and say, well, you know what you told me didn't work, so therefore I want some type of recourse, or everything can't always work the way we want it to work, so there's really nothing we can do about it?
So with any type of, whenever the conversation is based on an investment side, CFP, I don't care what the title is, anytime an investment is involved, there cannot be any guarantees. And anybody that can offer you or claim to offer you a guarantee, I guarantee you, is not governed by any authority or what have you, and they're living reckless. So that's the first part on that. Outside of the investment vein, as it relates to whether it's just techniques, strategies, etc., like for CPAs, one of the misconceptions about a CPA is like people be proud to say, "Oh, my CPA, my CPA." Half of the people that's called CPAs are not actually a CPA, and most of the people that have a CPA don't actually need a CPA. A regular bookkeeper or accountant will do. And this is no diss on CPAs, but their greatest power is the ability to certify financials. And if you're not about to buy, sell, or whatever a business and don't need that particular service, then, their knowledge level varies, based on their experience. But the GAAP, General Accepted Accounting Principles, apply. That kind of governs what's accepted as far as techniques with them, because it's mostly, accounting. When it comes to tax strategy, there's tax law, and I'm sure you've heard this before. Tax avoidance is absolutely legal. Tax evasion is criminal.
Yeah.
Intent, or as we call it facts and circumstances, kind of dictate what's what on that. I've seen people be able to get out of bad situations because of bad tax advice, but it was documented. And so they had the recourse of not eliminating the situation, but being able to have penalties and things like that reduced, and more grace allowed for whatever debt that was associated with that. These days, tying back to that other part with social media, you have celebrities that are catching momentum because of little sound bites, because they may have sat with a quality person that set them up a certain way, and they got just enough to kind of grasp the concept, but they don't recognize their own power, and they turn around on social media and they're trying to regurgitate this without none of the science that goes with it, and it's becoming reckless. I think what's my guy's name? The rapper, Atlanta guy. Yeah. Man, some months back, he let some stuff slip out of his mouth, and the crazy part about it was the information wasn't wrong, but it was so incomplete.
Yeah.
And if you go down that lane, like right from the door, suitability, like we talked about earlier. Do you have enough money to make sense for you? He's not telling you how he accumulated wealth. He's telling you how he preserved it.
Yeah.
And in the grand scheme of things, he's not the one doing it. Understand this. He pays somebody, and handsomely to set these things in place for him, and he just happened to have enough personal interest to say, hey, I need to understand this. That doesn't mean he knows it or mastered it. I saw a new one by him today on a totally separate interview, and it was kind of more of the same, except for he wasn't talking about trust. It was something else. Oh, he was talking about insurance, actually.
Okay.
About life insurance. Everything he said was accurate, but it was so incomplete. And you can't move in a way like that, with your dollars, because you can't afford to make missteps like he can, the average person, so that's the benefit of building relationships with a quality professional, because one of the things I say about especially CPAs, most CFPs, EAs, etc. Yeah, we cost, but we pay for ourselves. Your return on that investment, you're going to be happy with. Only key is that, and I have to say this, I have to add this to the wealth conversation. I want people to look at wealth the same way you look at a diet regimen. So every year there's a new hot type of diet, keto, so forth and so on, flat tummy tea, all the gimmicks, new exercise craze, whatever, new workout machine, has been since the 80s, since Richard Simmons, right?
Yeah.
But here's the truth about weight loss. You have to burn more calories than you consume.
Yeah.
All the rest is a bunch of razzle dazzle. At the end of the day, you have to burn more calories than you consume. That's the weight loss formula. How you achieve it, there's a million ways to do it. There's no right or wrong. Well, when it comes to accumulating wealth, understand that you have to save more money than you spend. It's impossible to spend more than you make. It doesn't work. It's mathematically impossible. Now, when I say save, I'm not telling you put it in a savings account. I'm not telling you you have to have a 401k or whatever. There's a million ways to save. You have to find the one that works for you. But at the end of the day, you have to save more money than you spend. And there's thousands of books on this, from fiction, so-called fiction, to, hard documentation type stuff. There's Richest Man in Babylon, there's The Alchemist, there's The Millionaire Next Door, all of these revolve around the key principle of figuring out your thing, monetizing that thing, and allocating part of these earnings as if you never got it. It's just that simple.
Okay. And so, in talking about how these financial professionals a lot of times are worth more to you long term than what you're paying for them, and they have a value greater than the cost amount. If someone's looking to hire somebody in the financial services space, what do you think they should look for in general?
When you say what do they look for, are you talking about from a pricing perspective or from
not really just a pricing perspective, but is there certain things I should be looking for to where I can feel certain I'm hiring the right person that can actually give me advice that's going to be helpful and not harmful?
Yes. There's behavioral traits.
Okay.
That will give this thing away. I'm trying to craft this here. So when you want to deal with, most people want to deal with a person or group that's successful in their own right, right? All right. With that said, contemplate this. If a person is working in any vein of the financial industry, and they're selling you a product or they're attempting to sell you a product, one of the things that will give them away quickly is you can pick up this need to sell. They need to close you on this. Well, that's the first giveaway that maybe they're not successful. Because the successful person is going to, one, answer your questions, but at the beginning, they're going to have more questions than they're answering because they need to know how to answer your questions. They need to understand you. They need to get the suitability part done. And that's in any vein of the financial space. And so when you're looking to work with someone, you know, if you feel that high pressure energy coming off or whatever, kill the conversation. Say, hey, I'll circle back to you, whatever, you know, get what you can get, go research just that or whatever, because when it comes to sharing this information, you know, occasionally I'll take the quick call. You know, some found me on Google and hit the 1-800 number and caught me at a time I'm not doing something, you know, and they'll, you know, lead into a question. Yeah, I got answers for you, but most of it is just to establish I know what I'm talking about. Once you get really, really specific, yeah, you're going to go hit this calendar and book an appointment, you know. And so if that person's not willing to just give you some nuggets and keep it moving because they need this sale, you know, then that's kind of a key that they're not really, you know, successful in finances. And so, not saying that's necessarily just a bad thing, but people tend to want to work with the best, you know. Like, I don't want to use your example earlier. I don't want to go to a mechanic who, you know, pulls up and I hear his brakes squeaking and his, you know, muffler spouting or whatever. Like, dude, you ain't touching my car, you know, like, you know. And the crazy part about it, he may have a lot of money in the bank, you know, but he claims to be a mechanic and your representation doesn't look like it, you know. So that's one of the things to get past the smoke and mirrors. The other thing is, like, we want to kind of rewind, you know, well, who certified you? You know, what is your background or whatever? You know, like, I can tell people the entire story, you know, without shame of the things that I went through and what happened, you know, to me when I just didn't know. You know, like, even now I look back on like 2004, 2005, you know, when I had businesses and just did not know. I'm working with somebody, I would think they would tell me, but they were more data entry, I guess, people, because when I learned how much money I left on the table, I was like, damn, you know. But can't cry over spilled milk. It's too far back to do anything about or whatever. But that's kind of the things you want to, like, ask a person what's their specialty or whatever. Because most of us, when we get to this level, we're niched in, if not one space, a couple of spaces. You know, like for me, it's advanced tax planning and tax resolution. I like to argue with the government and I like to save people money. You know, well, I also do cannabis accounting or whatever, but that's the area I do because I know taxes or whatever, and I know that cannabis and crypto is going to marry each other before the government is prepared to address it or whatever, and people are going to need that guidance, and it's already, you know, really kind of a thing for me. So it's not take the mystique out of it and apply the same type of game you would with anything else. You know, like if you were buying a house or a car or even looking for a recipe online, you're going to go through certain due diligence kind of steps to make that thing comfortable for you, and then always be willing to get, you know, a second opinion, because if somebody's not willing to afford you that, that's another red flag.
Okay. Okay. Now, in your own career, what are some of the things that you've had to, or some of the challenges that you have to overcome to get to the level of personal success that you've gotten?
The single biggest challenge that I have to overcome is the associated perception to the tax industry. So people say, hey, you do taxes? And like anything, man, there's levels to this, you know, and because most people identify that with the typical tax mills, like the Blocks and Hewitts and things of that nature, they think that's the area that I'm playing in, you know, and it's like that's probably the single hardest thing to overcome, to establish myself as the authority in my space.
Okay. And how have you been able to kind of be successful in being able to establish yourself as an authority and not a general person, but having a specialty that people can perceive as being very valuable?
Glad you asked me that. That's a great question. And the answer that I'm going to give, it doesn't matter if you're in the financial industry or the tax industry or anything. This applies to you wherever you are, and if you're serious about what you're doing. So take this note. Dave, one day I made a decision. That decision was, if you're going to talk to me, we're going to talk about taxes. It was that simple. And the result of that was a lot of people don't want to have that conversation. So it changed my circle.
Yeah.
You know, and in doing so, what would happen is, you gotta understand. Can I get real with him for a second?
Yeah, go ahead. Do what you gotta do.
So in what I do, this is where the lies stop. You can front for social media and do this. This is where the lies stop. This is also the reason why most people that operate in these spaces, they can't get close friends and family to do business with them, because we're like judges of your finances. We all up in that thing. You can't lie to us because numbers don't lie, right? So, you know, I made the decision, hey, you're gonna talk to me, we're gonna talk about taxes, right? And the environments just started to change or whatever. And so I had to become even more immersed into what I do. There's this question that goes around on social media and a lot of business groups. Well, what can you wake up and talk about for an hour with no rehearsal or whatever? You know, and I'm like, all day I can do this. You know, I can do this all day, every day. You know, wake me up out my sleep. It don't matter. You know, I do this. But in doing that, my experience has been, you have to continue to learn, you have to continue to grow, because whatever level you're at, you're always going to be tested. And sometimes you won't know that you're tested. I had a situation in 2015 where a very, very, very wealthy woman threw me a test. I was so concerned with making the impression to be able to get into her circle, I didn't even realize what the test was, you know, and I spent countless hours looking for the information, you know, and like you said, the code's kind of ambiguous. So I had all of this information to present that none of it really kind of addressed the question. But guess what? The test had nothing to do with the information or nothing else. She had a qualified person she had been dealing with for 2 decades or whatever. What she was trying to find out is if she can allow me into her space. And I failed miserably because I was on the wrong assignment. As young people say, they understood the assignment. Yeah. I didn't understand the damn assignment, you know. So I went 100 miles of running this way, like J. Cole said, congratulations, but you went the wrong way. You know, I went 100 miles an hour in this direction, you know, trying to really get this answer or whatever. And guess where I failed at?
Where'd you fail at?
When it was time to charge her, my price was way too low. She was so offended when she stroked that check and walked out of that meeting or whatever. It's like, damn. And it took me a couple of days to figure out what was wrong. You know, my price was way too low. She was expecting a 5-figure invoice and she had a 3-figure invoice. Yeah. So, and at that time, you know, this was an area, a level that I wasn't accustomed to. I was handling, some business taxes and this and that and other, but this dealt with business where businesses meet trust. And this was the stuff Walker was talking about at the time. And at that time, I didn't have the game.
Yeah.
Now, I'm researching and I'm looking, but I could not find it in the language that they were operating in. But again, that wasn't even the test.
Okay, so you talked about you really enjoying arguing with the government and helping people save money. But is there any one thing about your profession that you really enjoy that kind of drives you, and makes you kind of want to do what you do every day?
There's actually a couple of things, Dave.
Okay.
When I am speaking to a group, an audience, and I see that light go off where it just clicked for somebody and they get it, that's joy. Outside of that, I think the whole, like to argue with the government thing is a genetic issue with authority kind of, so I like to see the small guy win and the money that, I save people in these different spectrums, because over here we have the tax resolution side. And this is when people are in trouble and the government is stepping down on their neck, like, hey, give us the money, and I think I get high off of that too, because like I can document and they got to back up, they got to back up and deal with me. They got to leave you alone. I get high off of that. I honestly do, because then I like to put on gloves and let's go, So then the other part is over here where people have, worked hard and attained some wealth or whatever, and they're able to make the type of investments that will have you strategically that helps them avoid, not evade, taxes or whatever. I don't know if you remember this conversation. Most people couldn't understand it at the time when Warren Buffett said that he thought it was a shame that his secretary pays more in taxes than he does. And then a few years later, you had everybody hyper offended at Donald Trump paying $750 in taxes 1 year. And it's like, to use the hood term, don't hate the player, hate the game, because the coach is there for everybody, but they're willing to do something you're not going to do. They're going to, like those people in particular, they have a team of people like me, so yeah, they tax bill might be low, but to get it there, they spend some money, so that's one of the things that, that's a couple of the things that really just like keep me going every day. And to be quite honest, the more I learn in this space, it gets addictive, man. It gets real addictive. Like, there's other stuff I want to do, and I've resided to the fact that, you know what, I just got to hire other people to do the other things I want to do, because I'm over here in this space, like the highest paid part-time job in the world. I bought the course. I was excited for it. I still haven't had time to look at it, because I'll be like, okay, I'm going to use this time, and then I get hooked on something. But it's one of those things where, the more you learn, the more you earn. I see people in this space that have 4, 5, 6 times as many clients as I do, and they're working. We were talking about that, prior to the show. They work themselves, they'll ignore their family and everything else for, this 12, 14 week period or whatever. And then 6 months later, they're kind of, selling bundles and hair plates or whatever, and plates or whatever, because they're doing the hustle part. They're doing the entry volume type of thing, and the rest of us, we're just not in that space. We're not going to do that.
Okay. So I want to ask you, and this is going to be something out to our audience. So if a person wanted to improve their financial situation, and we know there's a lot of steps that they should do, what would you kind of recommend as step one that they needed to do to improve their financial situation?
Step one, real easy. Take 5 to 10 minutes every day, every single day, without fail, Sundays included. Take 5 to 10 minutes every day and read something regarding finances, whether it's in a periodical, something online, Investopedia. The information is everywhere. You know, it bothers me that people have these $1,200 paperweights and they'll Google a celebrity net worth, but won't Google, you know, financial information. It's out there. And if you invest this much time in it every single day, within a year, you will have amassed so much education that your behaviors, your movements will be different. You will start to do things different because it has to happen up here first. You know, you have to have that paradigm shift because many of us, especially us, come from bad money backgrounds, even those of us that were well off. And that ties into an upcoming book I'm working on. But we come from poor money relationships. Even when we didn't necessarily grow up poor, the relationship with money was poor. You know, we grew up in these taboo things where you didn't talk about money in certain, you know, places or whatever. And so a lot of time and energy got wasted. Spend 5 to 10 minutes a day, and I promise you, at the end of 1 year, if you don't take any other action outside of that, your thought processes will be different.
You know, I'm glad you said that because something I teach my students is that once they start the program, they take 30 minutes a day and read about the financial markets. And I give them the ability to do that through some browser plugins that I've had. But I told them the same thing. If you take, I say 6 months to a year, it'll change the way you see the world because the information that's being presented to you is totally different than what's being presented to the mainstream. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I learned from a guy who was a marketer out of Cleveland, he said, you know, the mistake we make is we don't think about money until we have some because we think we shouldn't worry about it till we get some. And a lot of times it's too late. So that's what I learned. And so, because, you know, growing up, I come from people that professional people work. We never talked about money. Mm-hmm. So then when you get money, you don't know what to do with it because you don't even. So I was growing. And when I got some money, I'm thinking, well, maybe I should get a CD or maybe I should get a money market account. I didn't know what else to do with the money. Mm-hmm. I didn't know I could go buy stocks. I could go to invest. I had no idea because I don't come from people that have done any kind of real estate, really didn't talk about the stock market, maybe do a 401k or a pension plan. So I was just totally ignorant to the space, even though my people made good money, but nobody really knew because we didn't talk about reading the Wall Street Journal or Bloomberg or anything dealing with finance or the markets. Right. So I'm glad you said it.
Exactly what I meant. It's just it's not that there was like some intentional deficit poverty thing. It's just that who are you gonna learn from if you're not learning it right? Who, you know, and so at some point though, now, you know, I have a lot more tolerance for people 17, 25, 26. But hey, when you 40, I don't hear nothing about what your parents did or didn't do. Yeah. Or there's a point in time where you have to take that thing upon yourself and act on what you say you want. That's what I was talking about earlier when I said a lot of people don't want what they say they want, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. But I agree with you. It's just that reading every day, it'll kind of change how you see things because a lot of the information that I see is not really beneficial to people long term. It may be very entertaining, but it's not very beneficial. And one of the things I was able to do was to start getting people to be a little bit more involved in their finances and the markets and have different type of conversations. And that's one of the reasons why you was able to add a lot of value because we don't get enough people that work in the financial sector to come on social media and to really talk about what they do. It's just pure entertainment, which is good for the entertainers, but it's really not good for us. Right. And we got to start making this kind of conversation be our entertainment. You know, this should be entertaining to you where we're going to sit down and talk an hour about how to improve yourself financially, things you should look for, yada, 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 and make that as entertaining as maybe the sports, things of that nature, or mix it into kind of more of a balance. So that's something I really was looking to do. So in closing, since we're talking about is it miseducation or the people on social media misunderstood, do you have any closing thoughts for anybody that is absorbing a lot of this financial information on social media and they necessarily may not know whether or not this stuff is accurate, whether they should move forward with it, or should they reach out to somebody like yourself that has a track record of success in the space?
Well, yeah, definitely that part, but I can't speak because I know some people in the financial industry that have major success on social media, but they are legitimately qualified people, and I'm finding that more of us are kind of attaining and finding the social media thing. I do the radio show where I bring other business owners on for the sole purpose of, I know it's going to come up. I don't even have to introduce it. People usually like, well, do you have some questions you're going to ask? I never wanted that part to look scripted, because I know that as a business owner, if you've been in business for 3+ years, guaranteed you found out the hard way about hiring a professional in that space. And so I would tell people in closing, do these two things. Ask yourself, what's the objective, and always qualify who you're hiring.
Okay. So, George, I really appreciate it. You added a lot of value, and you gave a really, really kind of different perspective, a different dynamic. And I really appreciate you taking the time out, because I know even though you said you got systems set up, you got a good schedule. I know it's normally a really busy time of year for financial professionals. We're getting ready to kind of close out y'all good run. So I appreciate you taking the time. So I'm going to leave your descriptions in the video. So if anybody wants to reach out to you, all your contact information is going to be in the description. But I want to tell everybody that's watching this, if you really want to get in contact with somebody that has gotten a lot of results in the space and they can put you in the best position to be successful, you need to reach out to George. I've known him through social for a very long time, very consistent. So, one thing about him is he's not a different person tomorrow than he was yesterday. It's a consistency in his behavior, and it's something I've really grown to appreciate. And I enjoy a lot of what he talked about, because I remember when you did the post about Donald Trump, and you were saying that people don't have any reason to be upset. This is really how the game is played, and that's what I want people to really understand.
Right?
Yeah, definitely.
You got to get in the game. You got to get, because I always say the best place to get the game is in the arena, but everybody want to spectate.
Exactly. Yeah. But that's the easy part. But we can get more people in. We can see a lot more success. So I appreciate everybody coming through. Like I said, if you got any questions, hit us up in the comments. Reach out to George, and we'll talk to y'all later.